The great chamber of the Galactic Concordance stretched beyond human comprehension. Its walls were not walls, but living crystal that pulsed with the collective consciousness of 10,000 watching species. Ambassador Marcus Vale stood alone on the speaking platform. A single human figure surrounded by beings that had conquered the stars before his ancestors learned to make fire. Above him, the Council of Seven Worlds sat in judgment. Each counselor represented a civilization so ancient that human history was barely a footnote in their records. The chamber itself was built 4 million years ago, carved from a dead moon, and transformed into the seat of galactic power. Every species that wished to join the Concordance came here. Most left humbled. Some left broken. Marcus felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure against his chest. Behind the crystalline walls, he could see them. Hundreds of alien species watching through quantum links across the galaxy. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others were clouds of sentient gas contained in force fields. A few existed in dimensions his eyes could not fully process, peering as shadows that hurt to look at directly. Council Arbiter Thelanara spoke first. Her species was made of living crystal, transparent and cold, with thoughts that moved like light through a prism. When she spoke, her voice resonated through every surface in the chamber. Humanity of Earth. You have petitioned this council for membership in the Concordance, but you also demand exemption from our most fundamental law. You wish to keep your weapons, your armies, your machines of war. Marcus kept his voice steady. We do, Arbiter. A sound like breaking glass filled the chamber. Thelanara's version of laughter. Every species believes they are special. Every warrior culture thinks their violence is justified. Do you know how many civilizations have stood where you stand now, making the same claims? She paused, and the chamber's crystal walls displayed images. Worlds burning. Species extinct. Empires collapsed into dust. This is what happens when species cling to their weapons. This is why the Concordance exists. To save civilizations from themselves. In the observation gallery above, Kiranel watched with 4 eyes evolved to analyze battlefield tactics at a glance. She was a military historian from the Velker Dominion. Her people had written the definitive texts on warfare across the galaxy. She had studied conflict for 400 years, and humanity's petition amused her. Another young species clinging to violent mythology, unable to accept that true advancement meant abandoning the blade. She leaned toward her assistant. A younger Velker named Oreth. Watch him carefully. He will invoke their legends now. Tales of impossible endurance. Stories of soldiers who cannot die. Every warrior culture has such myths, Marcus continued, speaking to the council. We understand your concerns, Arbiter. But Earth's history is different. We did not evolve in peace. For millions of years, we were hunted. We were prey to creatures stronger and faster than ourselves. We survived by outlasting them, by refusing to stop. That persistence is not something we chose. It is what we are. Another counselor spoke, a being of pure energy contained in a magnetic shell. Its voice crackled like distant lightning. You speak of evolution as if it justifies violence. Every predator evolved to kill. Every prey species evolved to flee. The mark of intelligence is transcending these base instincts. We have transcended them, Marcus replied. We have built a peaceful world. We have eliminated war among ourselves. But we have not forgotten how to fight, because forgetting would be denying what made us survive. Thelanara's crystal form pulsed with colors that Marcus's translator struggled to interpret. Skepticism mixed with curiosity. You claim your species has a unique capacity for endurance, that humans can withstand what others cannot. These are the stories of primitive warriors told around fires. Mythology has no place in Concordance proceedings. Then test us, Marcus said. The words came out before he could stop them, and he immediately felt the temperature in the chamber drop. Testing was not done lightly. Testing meant the trial of red sands, and the trial killed almost everyone who attempted it. The chamber went silent. Even the ambient hum of quantum communication ceased. 10,000 species held their collective breath. Kiranel sat forward in her seat. This was unexpected. Humans had a reputation for bravado, but accepting the trial was suicide. She activated her personal recording devices. This would make an excellent case study for her next book about species who destroyed themselves through pride. Thelanara's voice carried a note of something that might have been respect. Or pity? You understand what you are asking? The trial of Red Sands has existed for 50,000 years. It has been attempted by 743 warriors from species across the galaxy. 618 died. 41 were permanently crippled. Only 13 ever completed all 3 challenges. I understand, Marcus said, though his hands trembled at his sides. The trial is not designed to be survived, Thelanara continued. It is designed to break the myth of warrior invincibility that young species carry like a disease. It shows them that no amount of pride or mythology can overcome the realities of flesh and physics. Those who survive learn humility. Those who die serve as lessons to others. Marcus thought of Earth, of the 7 billion people watching this transmission, of the choice before them: surrender their sovereignty and become a protected species under Concordance control, or prove that human endurance was more than legend. Humanity accepts the trial, he said clearly. The chamber erupted, not in sound, but in light. Every species watching had an opinion. The crystal walls flashed with 1,000 colors as their reactions flooded the quantum network. Some expressed approval, more expressed dismay. A few expressed what Marcus's translator labeled as grief, as if they were already mourning humanity's coming extinction. Kiranel's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense thought among her people. She pulled up human military history on her data tablet. What she found disturbed her, though she would not admit why. Every major conflict in human history showed the same pattern. Soldiers who should have broken, who mathematically should have surrendered, who instead fought until physically incapable of continuing. Wounded warriors returning to battle. Last stands against impossible odds. A species that treated death not as an ending, but as merely another obstacle. She dismissed it as propaganda. All species exaggerated their military achievements. The difference between myth and reality would be demonstrated soon enough in the arena. Thelanara spoke again, and her voice carried across the galaxy. Earth's champion will be selected and transported to the Colosseum of Proving. The trial will commence in 72 hours. All member species are invited to witness. Let it be recorded that humanity chose this path. What happens next is their responsibility alone. The transmission ended. Marcus collapsed into a chair as soon as he left the speaking platform. His hands shook uncontrollably now. He had just committed one human to almost certain death. He had gambled the entire future of Earth on the hope that the stories were true, that humans really could endure beyond reason, that evolution had written something into their DNA that other species lacked. In 72 hours, they would have their answer. And in the observation gallery, Kiranel began preparing her equipment. She would document this carefully. The moment when humanity's myths collided with reality. The moment when one more warrior culture learned that legends die easily in the arena. She had no doubt about the outcome. She had studied war for centuries. She knew how these stories ended. What she did not know was that in 72 hours, everything she thought she understood about warfare would be shattered. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Within hours, every human with access to communication networks knew about the trial of Red Sands. Governments held emergency sessions. Religious leaders offered prayers. Military commanders began the impossible task of selecting one person to carry the weight of an entire species. Kiranel arrived at the Colosseum of Proving 2 days before the trial. The structure was ancient beyond measure. Built by a civilization that had vanished into cosmic history, it stood on neutral ground between 3 star systems. It's a massive sphere of dark metal that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Inside, the arena had witnessed the testing of warrior species for millennia. Blood from 1,000 different biologies stained its sands. She secured the best observation position and began her research in earnest. Her 4 eyes moved across multiple data screens simultaneously, absorbing information about human combat capabilities. Their reaction times were average. Their physical strength was below galactic median. Their natural armor was non-existent. By every measurable standard, they were unsuited for arena combat. Yet their history troubled her. She found records of human soldiers who had continued fighting with injuries that should have rendered them unconscious. Medical reports documented cases where humans survived blood loss that would kill most species. Pain tolerance tests showed results that her scientific training said were impossible. Orith entered her observation pod carrying refreshment containers. "Have you found anything that changes your assessment?" he asked. "Nothing that cannot be explained by their adrenaline response," Kiranel replied. "They have documented their own stress hormones through glee. When threatened, their bodies release chemicals that suppress pain and enhance strength temporarily. It is impressive chemistry, but chemistry nonetheless. The Keltharian warrior they will face has similar adaptations, plus natural weapons and armor. The human will last minutes at best. The pattern holds across all their conflicts," Orith observed, gesturing to her data screens. "Every war, every nation, spanning thousands of years. Soldiers who should have surrendered did not. Propaganda," Kiranel said firmly, "or selective reporting. No species can fight beyond their biological limits. Pain exists for a reason. Blood loss causes unconsciousness for a reason. These are universal physical laws, not suggestions that can be overcome with willpower." Earth's transport ship arrived on schedule. Kiranel watched through the observation screens as a single human emerged. Lieutenant Jackson Reeves. She had studied his military file extensively. Special operations soldier. 15 years of combat experience. Decorated multiple times for actions under fire. But he was not the massive warrior she had expected from human mythology. He stood at average height for his species, appeared to be in his late 30s, and moved with quiet efficiency rather than showmanship. Disappointingly ordinary. The trial rules were explained in the chamber beneath the arena. Reeves would face 3 challenges in succession. Each challenge was designed by a different council species to test a different aspect of combat capability. There would be no rest periods between challenges. No medical intervention until all 3 were complete, or the challenger was physically unable to continue. Death was permitted. Surrender was permitted. But once the trial began, stopping for any other reason meant automatic failure. The first challenge was announced. Combat against a Keltharian marauder. Kiranel felt a chill run through her sensory organs. The Keltharians were one of the last warrior species integrated into the Concordance. And only after their empire had collapsed in a series of brutal civil wars 2,000 years ago, they stood 3 meters tall with natural armor plating that could deflect most projectile weapons. 4 arms ended in claws sharp enough to tear through steel. Their combat representative had won 43 consecutive matches against challengers from other species. Reeves shown images of his opponent. His expression did not change. He asked only one question. "Are there rules about what I can target?" The arena master, a floating sphere of contained plasma, responded in a voice like distant thunder. "Lethal strikes are permitted. The Keltharian has agreed to fight to incapacitation or death, as have you by entering the trial." "Understood," Reeves said simply. Kiranel watched as the human was escorted to the preparation chamber. She activated her tactical analysis systems, overlaying probability calculations on her view screens. The human had a 4% chance of survival if he focused entirely on defense and waited for the Keltharian to exhaust itself. 0% chance if he attempted any offensive action. The arena floor was crimson sand, ported from the Keltharian homeworld. Tradition, the arena master explained. Let warriors fight on ground that remembered their ancestors. The observation galleries filled with representatives from hundreds of species. Some came out of curiosity. Others came to witness what they believed would be humanity's humiliation. A few came to honor a warrior facing impossible odds. Ambassador Marcus sat in the Earth delegation section, his face pale. Beside him sat General Patricia Stone, commander of Earth's combined military forces. She had personally selected Reeves for this mission. If he died, she would carry that weight for the rest of her life. The Caltharian entered first. Its name was Krathix, and it had been bred for arena combat from birth. Its armor plates were scarred from previous fights. Its forearms moved in patterns that demonstrated decades of combat training. It roared as it entered, a sound that vibrated through the observation shields it made. Several species representatives flinch. Reeves entered from the opposite side. He wore minimal armor, just enough to satisfy basic safety protocols. He carried a combat knife and a sidearm that fired projectiles, primitive weapons by galactic standards. He did not roar. He did not posture. He walked to his starting position and waited. Kiranel checked her instruments one final time. The human's heart rate was elevated but controlled. His breathing was deep and measured. He showed no signs of the panic she expected. Instead, he appeared focused, professional, as if he had done this before. The arena master's voice boomed across the chamber. Let the trial of Red Sands commence. First challenge. Combat to incapacitation or death. Begin. Krathix charged immediately. 3 meters of armored muscle moving with terrifying speed. Its forearms spread wide, claws extended, ready to tear the human apart. The observation gallery fell silent. This would be over in seconds. But Reeves did not retreat. He did not freeze. He moved forward, accelerating directly toward the charging Caltharian. Kiranel's tactical system screamed warnings. This was suicide. Meeting a charge head-on violated every principle of combat when facing a larger opponent at the last possible moment. Reeves dropped into a slide across the crimson sand. Krathix's S-claws passed through empty air where his torso had been. The human's momentum carried him directly beneath the Caltharian's center mass, and as he slid past, his combat knife flashed. Upward in a precise arc, the blade found the gap between armor plates at the inside of Krathix's primary leg joint. It was a tiny target, barely visible even to Kiranel's trained eyes. But the human found it while sliding across sand at high speed, found it, and opened a wound that sprayed purple blood across the arena floor. Krathix screamed. The sound was different from its opening roar. This was pain. This was shock. This was a warrior who had won 43 consecutive fights. Suddenly realizing its opponent was not prey, Reeves rolled to his feet, blood already staining his uniform. One of Krathix's claws had caught him during the exchange, opening a gash across his ribs. But he was standing, moving, his knife held ready for the next exchange. Kiranel's mandibles froze mid-click. That should not have been possible. The speed, the precision, the absolute commitment to a counterattack that required placing himself in certain danger. This was not the fighting style of a species new to galactic warfare. This was something refined through countless generations of conflict. First blood had gone to the human and the Caltharian. Wounded and enraged was just getting started. The battle became an education in human warfare. Kiranel's analysis systems struggled to predict Reeves's movements because he fought with a philosophy that contradicted established combat theory. He did not prioritize protecting himself. Instead, he calculated trades. His flesh and blood versus the opponent's vulnerabilities. A cut to his arm in exchange for a strike at a knee joint. A gash across his shoulder to get inside the reach of those deadly claws. 3 minutes into the fight, Reeves was bleeding from a dozen wounds. The worst was across his ribs, where Krathix had scored a deep slash during a failed dodge. The medical sensors in Kiranel's observation pod flagged it as a critical injury. Muscle damage. Possible organ involvement. Blood loss accumulating to dangerous levels. But the human continued moving. His breathing was harsh now, visible in the way his chest heaved between exchanges. Yet his strikes remained precise. His footwork stayed controlled. If he felt pain, it did not slow him. Krathix was learning to fear. The Caltharian had fought many opponents, but never one like this. Most challengers tried to avoid damage to outlast the Caltharian's aggression until it tired. The humans seemed to accept injury as part of strategy, as if pain was just another resource to calculate and spend wisely. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The crimson sand beneath their feet was darkening with blood from both fighters. Krathix was favoring its wounded leg, and 2 more cuts marked its arms where Reeves had exploited openings. But the human was worse off. He moved with a slight limp now. One arm hung lower than the other, damaged in ways that should have ended his ability to fight. Horath spoke quietly beside Kiranel. His adrenaline should be depleting. The chemical response cannot sustain this level of activity indefinitely. I know, Kiranel replied, but uncertainty crept into her voice. Her instruments showed the human's stress hormone levels. They were elevated far beyond what her research indicated was normal. Either human biology was more variable than documented, or Reeves represented an extreme outlier. 12 minutes. Krathix attempted a finishing combination, all 4 arms striking in a pattern that should have been unavoidable. Reeves took one claw across his left thigh, another that grazed his face, and used the injuries as distraction to drive his knife into the Keltharian's already wounded knee joint. The blade sank deep. Krathix's leg buckled. The massive warrior crashed to its knees in the sand. Before it could recover, Reeves was behind it, his knife at its throat, speaking words too quiet for the observation deck to hear through the shields. Yield, Reeves said. You fought well. Yield with honor. Krathix's breathing came in great heaving gasps. Purple blood ran down its armor. It had never been defeated, never been forced to its knees. Its warrior pride screamed to continue, but its tactical mind recognized truth. The human would kill it if the fight continued. Not might would, I yield, Krathix said in its own language, and the arena. Translation systems. Broadcast it to every observer. The chamber erupted in shocked reactions, clicking, whistling, harmonic. Frequencies that expressed disbelief across a dozen different species. A human had defeated a Keltharian champion. Species barely registered in Concordance military databases had bested a warrior bred for combat from birth. Medical drones swarmed into the arena, but Reeves waved them away from himself. Second challenge, he said clearly. His voice carried despite the blood running down his face from the cut that had narrowly missed his eye. I am here for the trial. One challenge is not enough. The arena master's plasma form flickered with what might have been surprise. Lieutenant Reeves, protocol allows for medical intervention between challenges. Your injuries require second challenge, Reeves repeated. There was no bravado in his voice. No showmanship. Just a flat statement of intention that carried more weight than any dramatic declaration. Kiranel found herself standing, all 4 eyes locked on the human below. This was madness. The blood loss alone should have triggered unconsciousness. The pain from his accumulated wounds should have overwhelmed his nervous system. But yet, he stood there waiting for the next challenge as if this was routine, as if fighting through catastrophic injury was just another day's work. Ambassador Marcus looked like he might be sick. General Stone beside him showed no expression, but her hands gripped the armrest of her seat. With enough force to make the metal groan, the arena master consulted with the council representatives for several minutes. Finally, Arbiter Thalanara's voice resonated through the chamber. The challenger has the right to continue immediately if he chooses. However, Lieutenant Reeves, you should understand that no species in 50,000 years has attempted consecutive challenges without medical intervention. The cumulative damage makes survival statistically impossible. I understand, Reeves said. Second challenge. The second challenge was revealed. It's a shifting maze. A combat environment designed by the Etherean Collective, one of the most technologically advanced species in the Concordance. The maze was not simply walls and corridors. It was a living puzzle where the passages moved and reconfigured constantly. Inside waited a phantom stalker, a predator species that hunted by sound and scent and could camouflage itself to near invisibility. Kiranel felt her respiratory systems constrict. The phantom stalker was considered one of the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. It had evolved on a world where prey species developed sophisticated defenses, forcing predators to become nearly perfect hunters. 3 previous challengers had died in this challenge. 17 more had suffered injuries so severe they required complete body reconstruction. And Reeves was already wounded, already bleeding. The blood trail he would leave in the maze would be like a beacon for the stalker. He was not facing a challenge anymore. He was walking into execution. "This must be stopped," Kiranel said, though she did not remember deciding to speak. Orith looked at her in shock. In all the years he had worked with her, she had never questioned a trial, never suggested intervention. "He has proven enough. This serves no purpose except death." But the human was already walking toward the maze entrance. Medical drones followed him at a distance, ready to retrieve his body when the inevitable happened. The observation screens switched to views inside the maze, showing the twisted corridors and the shadow that was the Phantom Stalker taking position. Reeves entered the maze and the walls sealed behind him. The Stalker's hunting shriek echoed through the corridors, a sound designed by evolution to paralyze prey with fear. Through the screens, Kiranel watched the human's reaction. His heart rate spiked. His breathing quickened. Sound affected him, but he did not freeze. He checked his weapons, tested his injured leg's ability to support his weight, and began moving deeper into the maze. The blood from his wounds marked his path in dark drops against the metal floor. The Phantom Stalker followed, silent as death itself, in the observation gallery. Kiranel pulled up every piece of human mythology she could find. Stories of wounded soldiers carrying their comrades to safety. Tales of fighters who continued through injuries that should have been instantly fatal. Legends of warriors who used their dying breath to complete their mission. She had always dismissed these as propaganda, exaggeration, the natural tendency of species to make heroes of their warriors. But sitting in that observation pod, watching, a human walk wounded into a trap that had killed countless challengers before him, she began to understand something that chilled her analytical mind. What if the myths were not exaggerations? What if they were documentation? What if humanity had been trying to warn the galaxy about what they were capable of and nobody had listened because the truth was too frightening to accept? The Phantom Stalker closed in, following the blood trail. And Jackson Reeves, bleeding and damaged, continued forward into the dark. The shifting maze lived up to its name. Corridors that existed one moment vanished the next. Walls moved silently on mechanisms older than most civilizations. Through their observation screens, Kiranel watched Reeves navigate the changing paths, leaving a trail of blood behind him that the Phantom Stalker followed with patient hunger. The creature was magnificent in its lethality. 3 meters long, with 6 legs ending in razor-sharp points. Its body could shift colors and textures to match any surface, making it almost invisible even to enhanced sensors. Sensory organs along. Its spine could detect the slightest sound, the faintest scent. It had evolved to hunt prey that could run faster, climb higher, and hide better than almost anything else in the galaxy. But humans did not evolve to be fast or strong. They evolved to be persistent, to track prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion, to survive wounds that would kill other predators. Watching Reeves move through the maze, Kiranel began to understand that humanity was not the prey in this scenario. They were persistence hunters wearing prey's clothing. 8 minutes into the maze, the Phantom Stalker struck. It dropped from above, camouflage dissolving as its massive jaws snapped toward Reeves's throat. Turned, but not fast enough. The creature's teeth sank into his shoulder, tearing through muscle and scraping bone. Blood sprayed across the metal walls. Kiranel's medical readouts went critical. Arterial damage, massive tissue trauma, systemic shock response initiating. The human should collapse in seconds. Blood pressure should drop. Consciousness should fade. These were not suggestions. These were biological certainties. But Reeves did not fall. Attached to the mangled shoulder, reached up and grabbed the Phantom Stalker's jaw, with strength that the readout said he should not possess. He forced the creature's mouth wider, preventing it from biting down further. His left hand drew the sidearm from his belt. He fired 3 rounds into the creature's soft palate at point-blank range.
Ow.
The Phantom Stalker convulsed and collapsed. Reeves staggered back, his right arm now barely functional, blood streaming down his tactical vest in sheets that soaked the floor beneath his feet. The observation gallery had gone completely silent. Even the ambient sounds of different species breathing or communicating had stopped. Everyone watched the human who should be dying. Medical drones burst into the maze, their sensors screaming about catastrophic injury. But before they could reach him, Reeves spoke. His voice was rough, damaged by pain and blood loss, but clear enough for the arena's systems to broadcast. Third challenge. Ambassador Marcus stood up in the Earth delegation section. "Oh no, that is enough." "He has proven," but General Stone grabbed his arm. "That is not our choice," she said quietly. "That is his, and he knows what he is doing." "What he is doing is dying," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "Maybe," Stone replied. "Or maybe he is showing them why they should never underestimate us again." Arbiter Thelanara's voice carried a note that Kiranel had never heard from the ancient crystalline being. Uncertainty. "Lieutenant Reeves, you have exceeded all expectations. You have defeated 2 challenges that have killed countless warriors before you. No one questions human capability now. You may receive medical treatment." "And third challenge," Reeves said again. And this time there was something in his voice that made Kiranel's combat analysis instincts trigger every warning protocol she possessed. This was not stubbornness. This was not pride. This was something else. Something her 17 volumes of military history had never encountered because it should not exist in rational beings. This was a complete refusal to accept that defeat was possible. Not confidence, not courage, something programmed deeper than conscious thought. An inability to surrender written into genetic code by millions of years of evolution. The third challenge was revealed. Kiranel felt every one of her respiratory systems seize. The gauntlet of blades. It's a narrow corridor 30 meters long, lined with automated weapons that fired in randomized patterns. Cutting lasers, projectile launchers, sonic disruptors. It was designed for species with natural armor or energy shields or supernatural speed. For a human, already wounded and bleeding, it was certain death. "This cannot be permitted," Kiranel said, louder now, standing in her observation pod. "The trial is meant to test capability, not execute the brave. He has proven humanity's worth. This serves no purpose, but the Council had made its decision. The rules were clear. Anger could continue as long as they were conscious and willing. To stop Reeves now would be to deny him agency, to declare him incapable of making his own choices. And that would invalidate everything he had already accomplished. Reeves walked to the gauntlet entrance. He tested his wounded arm, found it could barely hold weight, and adjusted his grip on his remaining weapons. He checked his ammunition. 3 rounds left in his sidearm. His knife was still sharp. His legs could still support him, though the left one dragged slightly from blood loss. The arena master spoke one final time. "Lieutenant Reeves, once you enter the gauntlet, there is no medical intervention until you exit or until you can no longer move. Do you understand?" "I understand," Reeves said. "I have understood since I walked into this arena. You designed these challenges to break warrior mythology, to show young species that their legends are just stories. But our legends are not myths. They are documentation. They are warnings. And you are about to understand why we kept trying to tell you." He entered the gauntlet. The first blade struck him in the leg, cutting deep. The second opened a gash across his face, blood running into his eye. The third should have disemboweled him, but he dropped and rolled, his damaged shoulder striking the floor with impact that must have been agonizing. Kiranel watched her tactical systems try and fail to predict his movements. He was not dodging with calculation anymore. He was moving on pure instinct, his conscious mind overridden by something primal. Every weapon that connected should have ended him. Instead, he kept pushing forward, meter by meter, leaving a trail of blood that marked his path. 10 meters into the 30-meter corridor. Both observation galleries and the council chamber itself had fallen into shocked silence. This was not combat. This was not even survival. This was something that none of them had words to describe. A human refusing to accept physical reality, refusing to acknowledge that his body had reached its limits. 15 meters, sonic disruptor caught him in the chest, and he went down hard. Medical readouts showed cardiac arrhythmia, respiratory distress, multiple organ trauma. He should be unconscious. His body should be shutting down to preserve core functions. But he was moving again, crawling now, one arm dragging uselessly, blood smearing the metal floor in a grotesque trail. The weapons continued firing, continued finding his flesh. 20 meters, 25. "He is going to make it," Orith whispered beside Kiranel. "By all the stars and void between them, he is actually going to make it." But at 28 meters? A blade meant for torso height caught him as he dragged himself forward. It entered his lower back. Medical readouts went from critical to catastrophic. Internal organ damage. Spinal trauma probable. Blood loss exceeding survivable levels. Jackson Reeves stopped moving. The observation galleries held their breath. 10,000 species across the galaxy watched through quantum links. In the Earth delegation section, General Stone closed her eyes. Then the human's hand reached forward, grasped the floor, pulled 1 meter. His other hand reached out, grasped, pulled. The weapons had stopped firing. He was beyond their range now, and the final meter that had been left clear as a mercy, a place to die in peace. But he was not dying. He was moving. Final meter. He collapsed across the threshold of the gauntlet. Medical drones swarmed him immediately, their instruments screaming alerts about catastrophic system failure. Emergency protocols engaged. Regeneration therapy. Synthetic blood infusion. Tissue reconstruction starting even before they had finished scanning the extent of the damage. Kiranel stood in her observation pod, all 4 eyes locked on the human who should have been dead 5 times over, who should have yielded at a dozen different points, who fought through injuries that contradicted every principle of biology and pain. Tolerance she had studied for 400 years. The myths were not propaganda. They were not exaggeration. They were documentation of a species that had evolved to refuse surrender at a level that made them fundamentally different from every other form of life in the galaxy, and Kiranel realized, with a chill that ran through every one of her neural pathways, that humanity had been trying to warn the Concordance all along. But nobody had listened because the truth was too terrifying to believe. Jackson Reeves survived. The medical intervention was extensive and involved technology from a dozen different species working together in ways they rarely combined. Regeneration. Therapy from the Etherian Collective to rebuild damaged tissue. Synthetic blood replacement using Velker medical science. Nerve reconstruction following crystalline healing protocols. The doctors expressed the same confusion repeatedly. His body fought to stay conscious, even under anesthesia designed to completely suppress neural activity. One physician, a floating cluster of bioluminescent organisms, described it as witnessing biology treat death as merely another obstacle to overcome. Another noted that Reeves's cellular repair mechanisms, though primitive by galactic standards, refused to accept damage as permanent. They work constantly, aggressively, as if every cell had been programmed to survive at all costs. Kiranel spent 3 days in the medical observation area. She did not sleep. Her species could function for extended periods without rest, and she used every moment reviewing footage of the trial. She watched each second of combat multiple times, analyzing from every angle, running simulations, comparing the data against her 400 years of accumulated knowledge about warfare. Everything she thought she understood collapsed under the weight of what she had witnessed. Her carefully constructed theories about combat psychology, her mathematical models for predicting when warriors would break, her fundamental assumptions about the relationship between pain and performance. All of it was obsolete now, shattered by watching one human refuse to stop. On the 4th day, she was granted permission to speak with Reeves. He sat in the medical suite, still connected to regeneration equipment through ports in his arms. His body was a map of new scars layered over old ones. He looked exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness, but his eyes were alert when she entered. She displayed the Velker sign of deep respect with all 4 eyes, something she had done fewer than 10 times in her career. It was reserved for warriors who had fundamentally changed her understanding of combat. "Why?" she asked. The question came out rougher than intended. Your body was failing. Your blood was outside you. Your nervous system should have forced unconsciousness to protect itself. Why did you continue? Reeves was quiet for a long moment, and Kiranel realized he was choosing his words carefully. Finally, he spoke. You have studied warfare for how long? 417 of your years? Then you know that wars are not won by the strongest army or the best technology. They are won by whichever side can take one more step forward after the other side stops. He paused, looking at his scarred hands. My species learned that lesson the hard way. For millions of years, we were prey. We were hunted by animals that were stronger, faster, better armed by nature than we were. We survived by outlasting them, by tracking them for days until they collapsed from exhaustion, by standing back up after they thought they had killed us. He met her eyes, and she saw something there that made her want to look away. Not cruelty, not violence, just an absolute absence of the concept of surrender. That persistence, that refusal to accept defeat, it is written into our DNA now, Reeves continued. It is not courage. It is not even really a choice at the level you might understand. It is just what we are. Pain is information. It tells you that you are alive, that you can still fight. Ignoring it is not some special ability. It is just training, learning to process the information without letting it control your actions. Kiranel's mandibles clicked rapidly. You train to fight through catastrophic injury? We train to push through it, Reeves corrected. There is a difference. We do not ignore the damage. We acknowledge it and continue anyway. Every human soldier learns this. Some are better at it than others. I am fairly good at it. But I am not exceptional by human standards. I'm just trained. The implication of his words struck Kiranel like a physical blow. If he was not exceptional, if this level of endurance was standard for trained human soldiers, then humanity's military capability was far beyond what anyone in the Concordance had calculated. One human had changed her entire understanding of warfare. An army of them would be unstoppable by conventional means. The Concordance Council convened 5 days after the trial to address humanity's petition. The chamber was more crowded than usual. Species that rarely attended council sessions had sent representatives. Everyone wanted to hear the decision. Everyone wanted to understand what humanity's performance meant for the balance of galactic power. Arbiter, Lanara's crystalline form, seemed dimmer somehow, as if the past week had affected even her ancient species. The Council has reviewed Lieutenant Reeves's performance in the trial of Red Sands. We have consulted our medical experts, our military historians, and our philosophers. What we witnessed challenges 50,000 years of Concordance philosophy. The chamber was silent. Ambassador Marcus stood in the speaking area, looking considerably more confident than his first appearance. He had watched the trial footage. He knew what the council had seen. We built our concordance on the principle that violence is a failure of civilization, Thelanar continued. That true advancement means transcending the savage instincts of evolutionary past. We have maintained peace across 10,000 species because everyone accepted this truth. Everyone surrendered their weapons. Everyone chose to rise above their warrior heritage. She paused, and the chamber seemed to hold its breath. Humanity has shown us that some species do not transcend those instincts. They refine them. They perfect them. They make violence into an art form so sophisticated that it becomes indistinguishable from the highest expression of will and determination. Lieutenant Reeves did not fight beyond his limits. He fought as if limits were suggestions rather than laws. This is not advancement as we have defined it. This is something else. Kiranel rose in the observation gallery. May I speak, Arbiter? Permission was granted. She stepped to the gallery's speaking position, aware that her words would be broadcast across the galaxy. I have dedicated my life to studying warfare, she began. I wrote 17 volumes about combat across every species and civilization in the Concordance. I believed I understood violence in all its forms. The human trial taught me that I understood nothing. She turned to look directly at Marcus. Humanity does not need weapons to be dangerous. They are the weapon. Their bodies, their minds, their absolute refusal to accept defeat. These are more terrifying than any armament the Concordance has ever faced. She paused, and her next words carried weight that made several species representatives lean forward. The Concordance should grant humanity's petition. Not because they have earned it through the trial, though they have. Not because we owe them respect, though we do. But because attempting to disarm humanity would require breaking something fundamental about what they are. And I believe that breaking them would require killing every single one of them, because they will not yield. They cannot yield. It is not in their nature. The council deliberated for 6 hours. When Arbiter Thelanara returned to announce the decision, her voice carried across the galaxy. The concordance grants humanity a unique status: autonomous military sovereignty with concordance oversight. Earth may maintain their fleets, their armies, and their weapons, but you must submit to strategic review by council peacekeepers. You will be monitored. You will be guided. And if you ever use your capabilities for conquest rather than defense, the full weight of the concordance will respond. It was more than Earth had hoped for. Less than they could have demanded after the trial, and exactly the compromise that would allow humanity to join the galactic community without losing what made them human. As the chamber emptied, Kiranel approached Marcus and Reeves, who had been released from medical care to witness the verdict. "I mocked your warrior myths," she said to Reeves. "I wrote 17 volumes on galactic warfare and believed I understood violence. I was arrogant and wrong." "You're rational," Reeves replied. "Most species should transcend violence. You are right about that. We are the exception. The strange ones who cannot seem to evolve past our need to fight. Will you teach me?" Kiranel asked. "About human military doctrine. About what drives you. I wish to write a new volume. One that actually understands what I witnessed." Reeves glanced at Marcus, who nodded approval. "I can do that," Reeves said. "But I should warn you. Reading about human warfare does not prepare you for seeing it. We have been fighting and dying for causes we believe in since before we had language. We have gotten very, very good at it. The galaxy is mostly peaceful now because species like yours learn to value life over victory. But sometimes peace requires someone willing to fight when fighting seems impossible. That is what we bring to the concordance. The willingness to be the ones who do not stop." Kiranel's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep contemplation. "I mocked your myths. I called them propaganda and legend. But they were never myths, were they?" "No," Reeves said, looking out at the departing delegates from hundreds of peaceful civilizations. "They are the instruction manual. They are humanity trying to explain what we are, what we can do, what we will do if pushed. The galaxy should hope it never needs to read the complete version, because the trial only showed you what one human can endure. You have not seen what we are capable of when we fight together, when we have something worth dying for, when we decide that survival is not enough and victory is the only acceptable outcome. Is that a threat?" Kiranel asked quietly. "It is a warning," Reeves replied. "The same warning we have been trying to give since we first asked to join the concordance. We are not like other species. We cannot surrender our weapons because we cannot surrender what we are. The concordance made the right choice today. Not because they trust us, but because they understand that some forces of nature cannot be controlled, only guided, only aimed at worthy targets." As the humans departed for their transport ship, Kiranel returned to her observation pod. She opened a new document on her data tablet and began writing. Volume 18 of her life's work, the title, "The Species That Cannot Yield, Understanding. Why Humanity's Greatest Strength Makes Them the Galaxy's Most Necessary Danger." She wrote through the station's night cycle and into the next day. Her mandibles clicked constantly, processing thoughts that would have been impossible a week ago. She had spent 400 years studying warfare and thought she understood. Violence, now she understood that she had only studied the surface. Humanity had shown her the depths, the place where biology and will and evolutionary pressure created something that should not exist but did, something that made them simultaneously the most dangerous and most valuable species the concordance would ever encounter. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. And that, Kiranel realized, was exactly what the trial was meant to accomplish. Not to break human myths, but to prove them true.